If your day was lousy, take what comfort you wish in knowing Yasser Arafat's day was much, much worse.
Others who were set back or down include Lech Walesa, General Augusto Pinochet, and half the huffers and puffers in Dalton, Georgia. The other huffers and puffers did fine, and all of this will make much more sense as we move forward on Overnight.
When I started this revolution, I knew it would be no picnic. Yasser Arafat said that Friday, after he was given 3 hours to get out of town. The town Damascus, where the Palestinian National Council is based. In sending him away, Syria has, in effect, put Arafat back where he was 2 months ago, cut off from his troops in Syria and in the Syrian-controlled parts of Lebanon, and far from the fight. Equally important, it makes it easier for the rebels within the PLO who do not want Arafat to lead them. Rebels, Arafat says, are backed by Syria. It's complicated. We'll backtrack. Begin with his arrival in Damascus.
Mr. Arafat's arrival in Damascus took most people by surprise, including the Syrians. He had, after all, accused them of fueling the anti-Arafat movement within his organization. Presumably, he realized his position was getting desperate, and desperate measures were necessary to try and stay in control. He certainly seemed confident of doing just that.
Everything is going in an excellent way.
Okay. Thank you.
There followed a day and a night of meetings inside his Damascus office, which came to an abrupt end when the Syrians told him to get out.
His welcome in Syria worn out, and his organization in total disarray.
There will be an official statement later.
Arafat's bulletproof car and security convoy sped to the airport. More humiliation awaited. Syrian security men took Arafat from the VIP lounge and made him wait in a small room. A Libyan-supplied plane prepared to fly the PLO chairman to his main base in Tunisia. At a meeting in Damascus last night, Arafat once again charged the Syrians with trying to destroy the PLO and his leadership. Arafat also said that these men were wounded and others killed by Syrian-backed forces. The Syrians have denied all of Arafat's charges. Some of the men in this Palestinian hospital in Damascus were wounded here in the Bekaa Valley, where earlier this week, rebel PLO units attacked and captured 8 Arafat loyalist positions. Abu Musa leads the rebellion, and although there is no proof that Syrian troops helped, it is clear that they did nothing to stop the rebels. Abu Musa's followers and the Syrians have constantly pushed for a more radical and violent position from the PLO, something Arafat has tried to avoid, in recent years moving the PLO toward conciliation and negotiation.
Arafat's problems really started when he and his men left Beirut last year, claiming a kind of victory. But months of inactivity left the men frustrated and bitter, demanding action, not words, against the Israelis. As they left Beirut, one of his men told me he has 9-10 months at most to prove that this was the right thing to do. So far, Arafat has failed to do that, and his time is almost up.
Time seems to have passed by Polish Union leader Lech Walesa as well. A symbol of his people's resistance to their government, he has apparently become what's known as an impediment. Or at least it seems that was what the Vatican newspaper meant in its front page editorial Friday when it spoke of his leadership in the past tense. The newspaper takes its cues from the Pope, but will Wałęsa. Correspondent John Cochran reports from Poland.
A sunny day, a lake, and a fishing pole. Just what a man needs after the pressure and police harassment Lech Walesa has endured for months, culminating in his walk in the woods yesterday with the Polish Pope. Wałęsa said the Pope gave him new strength and hope. And Wałęsa gave the impression today that the Pope's visit may hasten the end of martial law and the start of conciliatory moves by the government.
A lot of things are going to happen, I heard. The parliament is meeting, the party's central committee is meeting. A lot of things will be resolved without my participation.
Walesa said he and the Pope discussed all important issues, but discussed them carefully because of the possibility that someone might be eavesdropping. Today, an old friend who acts as Wawesa's bodyguard was keeping watch, but there has been no obvious sign of police surveillance since Walesa returned from his talks with John Paul. Even so, Walesa has no illusions that the government likes him any better because he met with the Pope. John Paul apparently did not encourage Walesa to expect that he will be invited to negotiate on reestablishing free trade unions. Walesa seems to feel that others will be asked to negotiate, but not himself.
The problem is not who negotiates, but what is negotiated. It is not important who solves problems. If there are better people to do that, then okay, let them go ahead.
When asked today if the Pope helped him, Walesa said yes, spiritually. That seems to sum up Wawesa's meeting with the Pope. Spiritual help, but no political help. Cold water, that is what the Pope apparently doused on Wawesa's ambitions to lead Poland's workers. For Walesa, it would be an enormous sacrifice to give up those ambitions. John Cochran, NBC News, Warsaw.
If the Pope seemed cool to Lech Walesa, he was not cool when, this week, he spoke of Poland, when he spoke of trade unions and spirit and freedom. When the Catholic Church speaks out politically, and when it does not, is something that is not easily understood or predicted. For example, on Thursday, the Church spoke out in Chile as well, where the trouble did not begin yesterday. Here are combined reports.
The police state in Chile was challenged for the first time today by the Catholic Church. Boldly defying 10 years of military rule, the church said the people have the right to dissent and strike, the need for a free press, and access to the government. The demonstrations against the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet have turned violent. The number of protesters is small by any standard, but in this repressive society, they reflect a significant threat to Pinochet's rule.
In September 1979, Chile's President Pinochet was riding high. A referendum showed 75% of his countrymen supported his policies, but no longer. In the most dramatic act of opposition in almost a decade of military rule, Chile's trade unions have launched an indefinite general strike. In a bid to break the general strike, the government announced that 5,000 unemployed people had volunteered to replace striking copper miners. Troops were installed at the El Teniente mine, demonstrating the government's vow to crack down on all political activities.
Until now, Pinochet has effectively controlled all dissent. He's exiled 10,000 Chileans and jailed thousands of others. Torture here is common. Rodolfo Sigel, the head of the copper workers union, was jailed last week for leading a protest. 17 other union leaders have since been arrested. Sigel's miners, who describe their leader as the Chilean Lech Walesa, have failed to support him fully. The 1,000 who did were fired. Those still working are bussed to the mines under surveillance. But that has not dampened the national movement against Pinochet, because it is not the repression alone which is at the root of Chile's discontent. It is the economy. The bankruptcy auctioneer works overtime. 1 in every 3 Chileans is looking for a job. And people are hungry. Soup kitchens are springing up in poor neighborhoods to help feed the unemployed. The people are worried about the future of their children and demanding a government that can right the economy. But Pinochet plans to hold on to power for 6 more years, and diplomatic observers here believe his grip, even on the military, is weakening. And they say if he cannot control the masses, another general will step in who can. Fred Francis, NBC News, Santiago, Chile.